Namaste and welcome to our continuing series, The Life Divine with our dear Ranganath. And we are in chapter Indeterminates, Cosmic Determinations and the Indeterminable. And we are at page number 313. From the paragraph, There is more to perplex us.
We'll read the whole para and then if necessary we'll come back to it. In the previous para, he has just given a hint as to what is perplexing. He is beginning the first sentence, there is more to perplex us. But in the beginning, in the previous para, he has spoken about how that which seems to be empty suddenly becomes qualities. That which is devoid of qualities develops qualities. So that is the miracle that we see. Combining, he has given one example. You take oxygen and you take hydrogen and put them together and you get water. There is no sign of water at all, either in hydrogen or in oxygen, and yet you get water. Why not something else? Water is there every time. So this is something very puzzling. It's like a magician and magic. So now we read the next para. There is more to perplex us, for we see the original indeterminate energy throwing out general determinates of itself. We might equally, in their relation to the variety of their products, call them generic indeterminates. With their appropriate states of substance and determined forms of that substance. The latter are numerous, sometimes innumerable variations on the substance energy which is their base. But none of these variations seem to be predetermined by anything in the nature of the general indeterminate. An electric energy produces positive, negative, neutral forms of itself, forms that are at once waves and particles. A gaseous state of energy substance produces a considerable number of different gases. A solid state of energy substance from which results the earth principle develops into different forms of earth and rock of many kinds and numerous minerals and metals. A life principle produces its vegetable kingdom teeming with a countless foison of different plants, trees, flowers. A principle of animal life produces an enormous variety of genus, species, individual variations. So it proceeds into human life and mind, and in its mind types towards a still unwritten end, or perhaps the yet occult sequels of that unfinished evolutionary chapter. Throughout, there is the constant rule of a general sameness in the original determinate, and subject to this substantial sameness of basic substance and nature, a profuse variation in the generic and individual determinates. An identical law obtains of sameness or similarity in the genus or species with numerous variations, often meticulously minute in the individual. But we do not find anything in any general or generic determinate necessitating the variant determinations that result from it. A necessity of immutable sameness at the base, of free and unaccountable variations on the surface, seems to be the law. But who or what necessitates or determines? What is the rationale of the determination? What is its original truth or its significance? What compels or impels this exuberant play of varying possibilities which seem to have no aim or meaning unless it be the beauty or delight of creation? A mind seeking and curious inventive thought, a hidden determining will might be there, but there is no trace of it in the first and fundamental appearance of material nature. So, to understand what he's saying, remember that there is, first of all, to begin with, an indeterminate. And that indeterminate produces determinates, relatives. Okay? And again those determinates become the mother of certain other more determinate determinates. It goes on, this process goes on like that.
And at present, the science only looks at the determinates.
Pardon?
At present, the science looks only at the determinates. Does it look at the indeterminates?
In biology they are looking at they don't look at it in this way, but take for instance the principle of life. Okay, it's an indeterminate. Here he is using energy. Energy also, okay, it will go even one more step. Energy is an indeterminate. We don't know what it is, it's a force. Okay, now this energy produces different, he uses the word energisms. Okay, it produces a cyclone, it produces a river flowing. This is all energy. Life is one form of energy only. Okay? Life. So if you take life as such, it produces different type of living creatures. So when I was at school, we were taught that there were, first of all, the life principle, which is indeterminate, produces determinates. Usually there used to be in those days vertebrates and invertebrates. We discussed this last time briefly, and I've got a chart, but I forgot to bring it. Next time maybe I'll bring it. So invertebrates and vertebrates. Those who have got a vertebra, a spinal cord, and those creatures which don't have. There are 8 or 9 species in the invertebrates, and in the vertebrates there were, now there may be more because science is discovering more and more. There are 5 basic determinates of the vertebrates. Life is the first indeterminate. It produces a determinate, which are vertebrates. Now the vertebrates themselves become the indeterminates of more determinate things, like the mammals, the fish, the amphibians, birds and reptiles. All these 5 creatures have got spinal cords. Now take mammals. Okay. Now the mammals is also a determinate. If you look at it from above, it's a determinate of vertebrates. But mammals themselves, the group of mammalian group, produces cat families, dog families, horse families, etc., etc. So it goes on and on and on and on, and there is no end to it. So if you want to say what is an indeterminate and a determinate, the one, suppose you take a cat family, its indeterminate is the mammals. And if you look at it below, the cat family will produce cats, lions, tigers, leopards, cheetahs, okay, wolves. Oh, sorry, no, wolf is a different one. That's a dog family.
Yes.
So, so this is the, so each determinate produces determinates, and those determinates again are producing more. Okay,
right.
Take for instance the plant life. Life is producing vegetable life. Vegetable life again is producing mango trees, chico trees, pineapple trees, whatnot. It goes on and on and on. There is no end to it. Now again go to the mango trees itself. Okay, there are different types of mangoes. In India we have got
200.
7 or 8 major ones and any number of minor ones. Again, if you take one tree, each mango is different. It is specific. So this end of variation, there is no end to it. This is what he is describing here. We'll try and identify the words, and this is basically what he is saying. And it is puzzling. How does it go on? Finally he is asking, what is producing this? Who is doing this? Is it a mind? Is it an inventive thought? Is it a hidden determining will? But we don't see this will and we don't see the thought. So it's a mystery to us.
Like there is an aphorism of Sri Aurobindo where he says, the wonders of the physical science are a plaything of babies. So,
yeah.
We
discussed last time that poem, the
Dream of Surreal Science.
what? Miracle of
Dream of serial science.
dream of surreal science. Yeah, we saw that. So Srimda had a good deal of fun with that. Okay, so we will go through each sentence and see whether, okay. There is more to perplex us, okay. For we see the original indeterminate energy throwing out general determinates of itself. Srimda himself has given me examples. I gave another example, but we'll go according to what Srimda is saying. Indeterminate energy. Energy is just force, but it can take any form. Even in science, energy can take the form of life. It can take the form of electrical energy, okay, muscular energy, thermal energy, okay, photovoltaic energy. It can go into so many different types of energies. So these are energisms, different aspects of energy. Throwing out general determinates of itself. So a general determinate is that which several determinates come out of the one indeterminate. Okay? So if you take energy as the indeterminate, it is producing electrical energy as one of its things. So that becomes the general. Okay? There can be so many other forms of energy. Now electricity itself is producing so many different types of energies. So it goes on endlessly. So yeah, our general determination. Now we might equally, in their relation to the variety of the products, call them generic indeterminates. What is the difference between general and generic? General is, the word is used in common sense, but generic is that which generates. It becomes the parent of other creatures. So that's a generic. It is generating other indeterminates. Okay? With their appropriate states of substance and formed and determined forms of that substance. Okay? So the latter are numerous. Sometimes innumerable variations on the substance energy, which is their base, but none of these variations seem to be predetermined by anything in the nature of the general indeterminate. Just now we discussed that. The mammal family is a general indeterminate. It produces cats and dogs and horses and all the other creatures. So there doesn't seem to be anything suggesting that these things can be produced. The general. Now he is giving examples. An electric energy produces positive, negative, neutral forms of itself. Okay, so forms that are at once waves and particles. He is going to quantum physics. Waves and particles. Okay, so a gaseous state of energy substance produces a considerable number of different gases. A solid state of energy substance, which, this we know, different gases. So, a gaseous state of energy substance produces considerable number of different gases. That we know. Okay. Similarly, he is taking solid, gas, and then he is also talking of solid. A solid state of energy substance, which results the earth principle, from which results the earth principle, develops into different forms of earth and rock and many kinds of numerous minerals and metals. This we discussed last time. Science says that the number of electrons determines the quality of the material that is being produced, the metal. It can be silver, it can be gold, it can be platinum, it can be lead, it can be aluminium, depending on the number of electrons. And if you go down to the electron level, it is always the same. And yet the number of these same things are producing different things. So which is impossible for us to understand. Okay, so a principle, a life principle, he has spoken about gas and he has spoken about substance. Now he is talking about life. A life principle produces its vegetable kingdom teeming with countless foison of different plants. the word foison means plenty, abundance, power, strength. Okay, that's what it means. A countless abundance of quite different plants, okay, trees, flowers. Now, it's very interesting. If you are very observant, you will see the types of leaves that exist in the physical world, okay. Just think of that. You will be absolutely stunned if you start looking at it. It can produce tiny, tiny, tiny leaves like that. Like the tamarind tree, okay. They're very, very tiny leaves, okay. If you go to a neem tree, it gives a basic about 1 inch leaves. You go to a banana plant and you have a huge leaf. So there's so many different types of leaves it produces. Some have, and what about the shapes? The shapes also are different. The colors are different. Okay, so that's what he's saying. A countless foison of quite different plants, trees, flowers. A principle of animal life produces an enormous variety of genus and species. This is again, he is making a difference. A genus is a class of subgroups, like a canine family and a feline family. Canine family, dog family, and feline is cat family. Species are cats, lions, tigers, cheetahs, leopards, etc. Okay, so this is why slight difference is there in the genus and species. Okay, one example he has given here: a canine family can produce cats, lions, tigers, cheetahs, leopards. Feline, sorry, I'm saying wrong. Canine family is the dog family. So you have dogs, foxes, wolves, different types of things, okay? And even in the dog family, again, there are so many. There are Pomeranian, there are Alsatians, there are small, there are big, there are so many different types of. There are the German Shepherd dogs, okay? So, we made a difference between, so foison of different plants, trees, flowers. A principle of animal life produces an enormous variety of genus, species, individual variations. So it proceeds into human life and mind and its mind types towards a still unwritten end, or perhaps the yet occult sequel of that unfinished evolutionary chapter. He is talking here the unwritten end. You go from the mind, it goes into the spiritual planes of consciousness, and the spiritual planes of consciousness, he is giving only a hint here, unfinished evolutionary chapter, it could go right up to the supermind. He is not saying that here, he is leaving it open. He will discuss that in the coming chapters. Throughout, there is a constant rule of the general sameness in the original determinate, and subject to this substantial sameness of basic substance and nature, a profuse variation in the generic and individual determinates. All dogs are same, you will be able to recognize a dog, but each dog is different. So, the sameness is the dogness, if you want, and the variations are each individual dog, colored in a different way, size different, and even the features are different. So, this is what he means. Throughout, there is a constant rule of general sameness in the original determinate, and subject to the substantial sameness of basic substance and nature. So, the substance also is same and nature also is same. It's interesting if you think of the nature of the dogs. One common feature of all dogs is their faithfulness to their owner. Cats are they're not exactly like that. They are more whimsical and more self-willed. Okay, so these are all the different. So, sameness or similarity in the genus or species with numerous variations, often meticulously minute in the individual, to such an extent that each palm is different. Okay, he says that. And even in the nowadays, they don't go by palm, they go by the the eye, even for identification. In factories, the worker has to stand in front of the camera, it sees the and recognizes the man and allows him to go through. Okay? So, meticulously minute in the individual. But we do not find anything in the general or generic determinate necessitating the variant determinations that result from it. There is no sign in the mammal family that it can produce a dog or a cat or whatever it is. It's impossible. It's impossible to make out how it happens. He has given so many: gas, substance, life, and finally he has come to mind also. It's impossible to know why the previous one is producing this one. There doesn't seem to be any link, a clear link. But we do not find anything in any general or generic determinate necessitating the variant determinations that result from it. A necessity of immutable oneness at the base. Sameness, yeah. A necessity of immutable sameness at the base, of free and unaccountable variations on the surface seem to be the law. Okay? But who or what necessitates or determines? What is the rationality of the determination? What is its original truth or its significance? What compels or impels this exuberant play of varying possibilities which seem to have no aim or meaning unless it be the beauty or delight of creation? Okay? So he's saying impossible. Now he's giving a suggestion. A mind, a seeking and curious inventive thought, a hidden determining will, these might be there, he says, might be there, but there is no trace of it in the first and fundamental appearance of material nature. Matter is producing all these different types of gases, life, trees, plants, animals, even human beings. But where is the sign of all this in matter? There doesn't seem to be any sign at all. So, that's why he is starting with the paragraph, there is more to perplex us. Okay? Now he is going to try possible explanation. And to get the explanation, you can't linger in the mind planes of consciousness. You have to go higher up, higher up, higher up. As Vivekananda has a very interesting comment to make. He says that the cause of anything, the origin of anything at any plane is to be found in the plane above it. So, if you want to find the problem of an illness, you have to go to the vital level. If you want to find out the problem of a vital level, there are so many psychological disturbances. You have to go to the mind level. If you go from the mind level, you have to go even higher up, higher up. Finally, you end up with divine is the cause of all. He is the one that creates all the variations. The one becoming the many. That's the final solution. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing, okay? Because this is a principle that there was a lady here, now she has gone away, so I can take her name also. Temi Ben. She was a wonderful lady, a Parsi, and she was into literature and poetry. Srivdas appreciated her poetry very much. When I was in the press, I printed a book on her. It doesn't sell. Poetry doesn't sell in India, but we printed the book, okay? Because it should be on record what the ashram has been able to do. We did that with Nishikant also. We printed the book, okay? So, she had a problem with her skin. Severe skin problem. Oozing, eczema like, all the time. Then she went to mother and asked. Mother said, the cause of this you have to find in the vital. So there is some disharmony in the vital, and that gets manifested here like this. Okay? So, the principle of Vivekananda again holds good. The cause of anything in the physical is found in the life principle. The cause of anything in the life principle, you have to go to the mind principle. There again, you have to go up, up. The cause can never be found in that same plane. You have to go higher up. Okay? So that's what we're going to do now. A first possible explanation points to a self-organizing dynamic chance that is at work. So now he brings in the idea of chance. Okay? This is also what the scientist says. There is a chance. We don't know how, but it happens. Mutation of cells. Okay, so that is that word. A paradox necessitated by the appearance of inevitable order on one side, of unaccountable freak and fantasy on the other side of the cosmic phenomenon we call nature. So, this freak you can see everywhere. Every species, there is a commonness and there is an individual variation. If you want to take trees, you take only one tree. Take the mango tree. Okay, all the mango trees produce mangoes. That's a commonness, the basic sameness. But each one is producing a different type, slightly different color, slightly different shape, and each one has got characteristics which are common. So that's a funny part. So there is one thing which is the chance, and it's a paradox necessary by the appearance of inevitable order on one side. A mango tree will never produce chikus. So that's what he's saying. Inevitable order is there, and yet there is a variation. So it really puzzles you. How does it happen?
Can that same logic be applied to human beings? Like even in us, the inevitable order is there. Like, the principle of the divine is our inevitable order, but it is distorted, and yet we are moving towards that because that's the inevitable order of the human being.
He means something even simpler. He means that a dog will produce only a dog. It will not produce a cat. That's what he's saying, order.
Right.
Okay, there is an order in what it is producing. A human being will produce only a human being. Okay.
Right.
Of course, when man interferes, he does all sorts of things. He brings in a tiger and a lion, and you get what is called a liger. They have experimented, but this is man's interference in nature process.
Yes.
So that's different. But this is the order that he's talking about. Okay, so inevitable order on one side, and unaccountable freak and fantasy on the other side of the cosmic phenomenon. Take even a dog which produces, say, 7 or 8 pups. Each one is different. The colors are different. Okay, so an inconscient and inconsequent force, we may say, that acts at random and creates this or that by general chance without any determining principle. Determinations coming in only as a result of a persistent repetition of the same rhythm of action and succeeding because only this repetitive rhythm could succeed in keeping things in being. This is the energy of nature. This implies that somewhere in the origin of things there is a boundless possibility or a womb of innumerable possibilities that are manifested out of it by the original energy, an incalculable inconscient which we find some embarrassment in calling either an existence or a non-existence, for without some such origin and basis, the appearance and the action of the energy is unintelligible. Yet, an opposite aspect of the nature of the cosmic phenomenon, as we see it, appears to forbid the theory of a random action generating a persistent order. There is too much of an iron insistence on order, on a law basing the possibilities. One would be justified rather in supposing that there is an inherent imperative truth of things unseen by us, but a truth capable of manifold manifestation, throwing out a multitude of possibilities and variants of itself, which the creative energy by its action turns into so many realized actualities. This brings us to a second explanation, a mechanical necessity of things, its workings recognizable by us as so many mechanical laws of nature. The necessity, we might say, of some such secret inherent truth of things as we have supposed, governing automatically the processes we observe in action in the universe. But a theory of mechanical necessity by itself does not elucidate the free play of the endless, unaccountable variations which are visible in the evolution. There must be behind the necessity or in it a law of unity associated with a coexistent but dependent law of multiplicity, both insisting on manifestation. But the unity of what? The multiplicity of what? Mechanical necessity can give no answer. Again, the emergence of consciousness out of the inconscient is a stumbling block in the way of this theory, for it is a phenomenon which can have no place in an all-pervading truth of inconscient mechanical necessity. If there is a necessity which compels the emergence, it can only be this, that there is already a consciousness concealed in the inconscient, waiting for evolution, and when all is ready, breaking out from its prison of apparent nescience. So now he is coming back to the idea of involution.
And also in the previous sentences, he is capitalizing the word necessity.
Yeah.
So what does that signify?
We'll finish the para and come back to it. Okay? We may indeed get rid of the difficulty of the imperative order of things by supposing that it does not exist, that determinism in nature is imposed on it by our thought, which needs such an imperative order to enable it to deal with its surroundings. But in reality, there is no such thing. There is only a force experimenting in a random action of infinitesimals, which builds up in their general results different determinations by a repetitive persistence operative in the sum of their action. Thus, we go back from necessity to chance as the basis of our existence. But what then is this mind, this consciousness, which differs so radically from the energy that produced it, that for its action it has to impose its idea and need of order on the world she has made, and in which it is obliged to live? There would then be the double contradiction of consciousness emerging from a fundamental inconscience and of a mind of order and reason manifesting as a brilliant final consequence of a world created by inconscient chance. These things may be possible, but they need a better explanation than any yet given before we can accord to them our acceptance. It's a very big para and pretty complicated, but basically he is going to discuss, he has told you that there is a basic sameness, but there is also a variation. So this is what he is discussing. They seem to be opposites. One is a fixity, a law of sameness. The other is a variation. It is not so fixed. These are two opposite things which are operating in nature. So, what is it he is trying to find out? This is the discussion basically. Okay? When there is order and when a dog is producing only a dog, it is by necessity. Okay? Does it have a choice? It doesn't have a choice. It is producing by necessity. That's what by NCAP. Okay? But there is a variation. How is that variation coming from where? If you look carefully, you will have to go back to Chit Shakti. Shakti is mechanical at the root cause here. Chit is something mechanical, unconscious. And that produces the law, the order. And consciousness is free. So it produces the variations. So if you go right to the top, the explanation is there. That Chit Shakti is both playing, and you can see this in many, many ways. You can think of it as Purusha Prakriti. You can think of it as determination and free will. All these questions are all related. So this is basically what he's discussing, but the language is quite tough, but this is, if you think of it that way, it's very easy. There is a sameness. And a sameness means this is bound to produce this. Therefore, necessity. Okay? Law, order. which is there very much in the physical world. There is perfect order. There is no variation of chance or anything. Okay? But there is a variation. Different dogs, different animals, the variation is there. And so what is this? That's what is going to discuss. So what is it trying to? A first possible explanation. So let's go back to the previous para and see what he's saying in summary. Okay? So he's saying in the previous para, sameness in the cause, original indeterminate and finite variation in the determinates, in the effects. Fixity, law, determination and variability, freedom, choice, both seem to exist side by side. There is a fixity and a law and a determination. This is one group. Okay, this is a necessity. As we said, a dog will produce only a dog. A mango tree will produce only a mango tree. There is a fixity and a necessity. It is bound to do that. It has no choice. So that is fixity, law, determination. But there is also a variation. So that's a variability. And when variability comes in, necessarily you have to associate freedom with it. Unless there is a little bit of freedom, you can't break the law. So freedom. And if freedom is there, choice. Okay? So these are the two things which is trying to find a solution to. Okay? They are opposites and yet they are working together all the time hand in hand. How come? This is what he is discussing. A first possible explanation points to a self-organizing dynamic chance that is at work. So when you say chance, okay, it is not law. No? Chance is not law. It can go this way, it can go that way. No. So, and self-organizing dynamic chance. If it organizes itself, it can produce in an orderly fashion. So that's what he's saying. Our first explanation is a self-organizing dynamic chance is at work. Okay? A paradox necessitated by the appearance of inevitable order on one side, of unaccountable freak and fantasy on the other side of the cosmic phenomenon we call nature. We see that both the things exist. There is a freedom of choice which produces variation, and there is a fixity and a law that produces. And they seem to be opposites. That's why he's calling it a paradox. In nature, everywhere you see this. Okay? Unaccountable freak and fantasy on the other side of the cosmic phenomenon we call nature. An inconscient and inconsequent force. So, inconscient, it's mechanical. It's got energy. Okay? And inconsequent. Now, what would the word inconsequent mean actually? Just see and let's see what. Consequence is of course importance. But there's the word importance, but here what would it mean? So he's saying an inconscient and inconsequent force. It can be in both ways, na? Illogical as well as not following from the premises. That's what he saw. Na? So, we may say that acts at random and creates this or that by general chance without any determining principle. There is no principle because the chance element is there. Okay, so determinations coming in only as a result of a persistent repetition of the same rhythm of action and succeeding because only this repetitive rhythm could succeed in keeping things in being. This is the energy of nature. So, an inconscient and inconsequent force. In other words, there is a force which is acting mechanically, which produces an order. Okay, we may say that acts at random. So this force is there. It is mechanical and inconscient, but it is acting at random. There is a certain free will in it. that creates this or that by general chance without any determining principle. Determinations coming in only as a result of a persistent repetition of the same rhythm of action and succeeding, because only this repetitive rhythm could succeed in keeping things in being. This is the energy of nature. Actually, putting the same thing in different words, there is an order in nature and there is a variation in nature. So he is combining these two and saying that it could be an inconscient force which has got this choice to bring in variations. That doesn't explain, but he's saying we could think like that.
I mean, I like the word rhythm here. Like, like if I was just thinking of an example for this where, like the birth of a child, like it takes 9 months for everyone and it follows a certain rhythm, right? A common rhythm. But there are variations among each of those things depending on, the receptivity of the mother and the conscious upbringing of the child. So it's the same rhythm, yet there are so many variations in the same rhythm.
Yeah. The rhythm suggests the repetition of an action. No?
Yeah.
So, but there is slight variation.
Slight variations.
Yeah, slight.
It's so beautiful.
Succeeding only because the repetitive rhythm could succeed in keeping things in being. This is the energy of nature. But this implies that somewhere in the origin of things, there is a boundless possibility, okay, or a womb of innumerable possibilities that are manifested out of it by the original energy, an incalculable inconscient which we find some embarrassment in calling either an existence or a non-existence. So what he's saying finally is that this energy which is inconscient seems to have some sort of choice. So there seems to be a contradiction. So what is this substance which is this producing this order and also choice and freedom? In other words, there is law and freedom. So can we call it existence or can we call it non-existence? So both the things are there. So it is something which you cannot specify. You can't say it is necessarily this or you can't say it is necessarily this. Featurelessness. The origin of things is a featurelessness. This is what he is saying. It has got both. And therefore you can't specify it is this, it is this. The Chit Shakti is coming from an indeterminate source. Okay? That's what he's saying. An incalculable inconscient, which you find some embarrassment in calling either an existence or a non-existence. Because what do you want to call it? An existence is something which has got everything in potential. And a non-existence is something which doesn't contain anything. And there are philosophies which say that nihil. They speak of nihil, nirvana. And others are saying, no, it is something which is full of possibilities. That's why embarrassment. Embarrassment because of the barren emptiness or featureless fullness. That's why embarrassment. It's a barren emptiness. Is it a barren emptiness or is it a featureless fullness? That's a question. Okay. The different philosophies have different words for it. You call it the self, or you call it the Brahman, or you call it the, in Sankhya philosophy, you call it the Pradhana. It is featureless, but it produces all features. Okay? So that's what he is saying. Embarrassment. Then, we find something calling it, for without some such origin and basis, the appearance and the energy and the action of the energy is unintelligible. If you don't, both the things are not there, then it's impossible to understand. There is a variation which is freedom, and there is a fixity and law which is fixed. So they seem to be opposite, but they are acting together all the time. Okay? So, yet, an opposite aspect of the nature of the cosmic phenomenon, as we see it, appears to forbid the theory of a random action generating a persistent order. How can a random action persist in a persistent order? So this is something that the mind can't understand. There is law and there is freedom yet at the same time. There is too much of an iron insistence on order, on a law basing the possibilities. One would be justified rather in supposing that there is an inherent imperative truth of things unseen by us and a truth capable of manifold manifestation, throwing out a multitude of possibilities and variants of itself, which the creative energy by its action turns into so many realized actualities. So, he's saying one would be justified rather in supposing that there is an inherent imperative truth of things unseen by us. We don't see, that's why we can't explain. But a truth capable of manifold manifestation, throwing out a multitude of possibilities. Basically what he's saying is that there is something which we don't see, but which contains both. That's what he seems to be saying. This brings us to a second explanation, a mechanical necessity in things, its workings recognizable by us as so many mechanical laws of nature, the necessity, we might say, of some such secret inherent truth of things as we have supposed, governing automatically the processes we observe in action in the universe. So now he is saying the other explanation. There is a variation in this that is there, a mechanical necessity of things. Its workings recognizable by us as so many mechanical laws of nature. The necessity, we might say, of some such secret inherent truth of things as we have supposed, governing automatically the processes we observe in action in the universe. But a theory of mechanical necessity by itself does not elucidate the free play of the endless, unaccountable variations which are visible in the evolution. There must be behind the necessity, that's the order and the law, or in it a law of unity associated with a coexistent but dependent law of multiplicity, both insisting on manifestation. But the unity of what? The multiplicity of what? Mechanical necessity can give no answer. Again, the emergence of consciousness out of the inconscient is a stumbling block in the way of this theory. For it's a phenomenon which can have no place in an all-pervading truth of inconscient mechanical necessity. It's something that the mind can't understand. There seems to be both and they seem to be contradictory. If you lean on this, if you say there is a law, then you see that there is a variation. If you say that there is a chance, but there is also a law. So, you see, you posit a truth which must contain both. That's what he seems to be saying. If there is a necessity which compels the emergence, it can only be this, that there is already a consciousness concealed in the inconscient, waiting for evolution, and when all is ready, breaking out from its prison of apparent nations. So in other words, he's saying there is an involution of all these things which seem to be opposites. There is an involution in the nations, in the inconscient.
There is a painting of the mother also which depicts that the presence of the divine in the inconscient.
She has also given there is a painting of mother with the Sri
Aurobindo's.
Yeah,
she was just doing some random color palette, and then Sri Aurobindo's portrait emerged from it.
We may indeed get rid of the difficulty of the imperative order of things by supposing that it does not exist. That determinism in nature is imposed on it by our thought, which needs such an imperative order to enable it to deal with its surroundings. But in reality, there is no such thing. There is only a force experimenting in a random action of infinitesimals which builds up in their general results different determinations by repetitive persistence operating in the sum of its action, of their action. Thus, we go back from necessity to chance. Necessity, you take it as law, order, okay? And chance, you can take it as
variation.
Yeah, variation and consciousness, choice, as a basis of our existence. But what then is this mind, this consciousness which differs so radically from the energy. The consciousness is Chit and the energy is Shakti. Okay? That produced it for its action, it has to impose its idea and need of order on the world she has made and which it is obliged to live. There would then be the double contradiction of consciousness emerging from a fundamental inconscience of a mind of order and reason, manifesting as a brilliant final consequence of a world created by inconscient chance. These things may be possible, but they need a better explanation than any yet given before we can accord to them our acceptance. So, basically what he's saying is difficult to understand what he's saying in detail, but basically both the things are there and they are contradictories. And we can't explain that. So to explain that, you have to go beyond the mind and see. One idea is giving the inconscient. In the inconscient, consciousness is already there, involved.
But somewhere in the paragraph, he has hinted that there is a unifying principle in both of these. But he'll explain that in the next paragraphs.
Ultimately, he will come to Chit and Shakti. Chit is the consciousness which produces the variation and the freedom, and Shakti is that which is mechanical and produces order. So this opens the way for other explanations which come. And all these explanations are mental theories which he will discuss one by one. Is it chance or is there freedom? So if you come to the psychological field also, you have the same thing, the same problem. Do you have freedom and is there fate? The same thing applies at the psychological level also. The explanation to all this can be had in this sense that if you keep the gradation in mind, at the lowest level there is total fixity and determination. But inside that there is the possibility of chance. There is freedom in that. Okay? And as you keep traveling higher and higher in consciousness, the consciousness starts emerging and the fixity and the law starts becoming less and less. There, Purusha Prakriti you can think of also in the same way. In the lowest level, Prakriti is dominant. Prakriti is mechanical, unconscious energy which is keeping consciousness under its foot. And like the icons we have in India, okay, the dancing and the
dwarf.
The dwarf being kept down, okay. And as you keep going higher and higher, Purusha starts asserting itself and Prakriti starts becoming subservient to it. So both the principles are there and they seem to be in the lowest, both are there but in different proportions. So you come back to the idea of freedom and will, free will, and fate. Both are there. And they are in different proportions, they are different. In fact, Sri Aurobindo says in one place that each plane of consciousness you can specify by the relation of Purusha and Prakriti. Okay. In matter, you have Prakriti which is dominant and Purusha is almost zero. It's never zero, but it is 0.0000001 because that's a possibility. At the self, when you come to the self, consciousness seems to be full and energy is there but held back. Okay? Energy, that's why he calls the self, Brahman, immutable. And immutability means no power, no movement. So Prakriti is held back. At the highest level, they are both equal to each other. Purusha and Prakriti. Consciousness and force are equal to each other. They become one. That is what he will finally come to. But in the lower levels, there is a huge problem. We can't understand how both these things can exist. At the physical level, somebody had asked Raman Maharshi, he was a Westerner, do we really, is there a fate or do we have a free will at all? So he said, so long as you are identified with your body, mind, life, there is a fate. But the soul has got freedom. And when the soul disengages itself from the body, mind, life, it is free. But the body, mind, life, there is a fixity and a law that operates in this way. That's finally what he will come to. I've gone a little beyond what he is saying, but he will come to that later on. So we stop here for today.